Peace to the saints. We are back with another study group on Sudan, the history, the politics, the current conflict. This is a study group that I do on kick.com/Marquette Devon. I was advised that some people may not be aware of it, so I should give the folks on YouTube a taste of it, YouTube and Twitch, so I will. Anyways, we do this in a uh, very specific way. The idea is that I want to demonstrate precisely how you go about research and becoming functionally knowledgeable on a particular subject. This is an important one that is actually complex, has a lot of dishonesty and propaganda. And though the best way is perhaps to speak with experts, to read books, we're going to go through and see how you can become proficient using online sources and common ways that you guys use today, your YouTube and all that good stuff. As we go through, if you have any comments, questions, tithes, tuition for the education, feel free to send it in. Per usual, for those of you who follow on kick.com/Marquette Devon, you know that we always start with a really quick review of the information we've already gathered. So I'll do that. We're talking geopolitics, which means that the surrounding regions matter, the interplay matters. And so we have some notes about Egypt, and we'll add to that. Sudan became independent in 1956. The current head of state is General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. He has been such since 2021, and he was landed there as a result of a coup. And there's a character named Omar al-Bashir who we should find out about, we should research. So he's on the list. So let's remember that. The current major players that you all should know of are the SAF and the RSF. First, speaking on the SAF, this is known as the Sudanese Armed Forces. This is essentially the government, the true government, if you will. They control northern and eastern Sudan, as well as Port Sudan. Ports are very important for commercial purposes, and much of the Red Sea. They are supported politically and logistically by Egypt. That means Egypt's actually taking action logistically. And says, and maintains links with remnants of the Islamist network from Omar al-Bashir's former regime. So what we really want to figure out is who is Omar al-Bashir. So that'll be a part of our research today. An important thing for us to track through our discussion and understanding of Sudan is the role of Islam and Arabs and Arab regimes, namely perhaps some of the ones we've named like Egypt and perhaps the United Arab Emirates. So Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, this is a fighting group, says it maintains links with remnants of Islamist networks from Omar al-Bashir's former regime. And we should try to figure out what those Islamist networks are. Islamist is not a positive term. This generally refers to Islamofascist or those who are extremist. The SAF has been responsible for indiscriminate airstrikes, sieges, and civilian killings. Well, that would be indicated with indiscriminate, right? Namely in Khartoum, which is the capital, and as well Omdurman. So these guys, so to speak, have some blood on their hands. But are they the only ones? Also, we're going to want to look into Chad, because Chad has been identified as a place that the RSF retreats to, right? We haven't mentioned the RSF yet. We've talked about the SAF. Those are the government forces. Now, for the RSF, they're known as the Rapid Support Forces. The Rapid Support Forces. Now, mind you, these are maybe the rebels. Depends on how you look at it. The RSF was established in 2013 by Omar al-Bashir. So we see consistently this guy is popping up in the Sudanese narrative. So we must understand who he is. Omar al-Bashir. The name certainly sounds Arabic. We're not in an Arab country. We're in Africa. So the history is really important. This was once part of Sudan's security structure, which is to say that the RSF, what we call the RSF today, was previously a part of the government's military forces. They control large parts of Darfur and parts of Khartoum and Central Sudan. Now that's interesting because you guys have heard of Darfur before, and the reason you may have heard of it is the same reason that I first heard of it many years ago. Circa 2011, I think I made my first donation because they were saying that there are crimes against humanity in Darfur. And the RSF is the group that has been accused of such, which is to say the non-governmental force was accused of committing war crimes or crimes against humanity, if you like, in the region of Darfur. Now, those, if you're asking yourself, well, who's who? The reason that race and religion must come up is because so much of history is about race, religion, and money, right? And these are the Black Africans. And in fact, I need to break out a slide on that one because I think it's important to know what these people look like. And again, my effort is to help you all develop your skills, like basic productivity skills that you should already have, but perhaps may not because the schooling system is not very practical. Let's try the AI. It's not terribly good, but it's worth me demonstrating, right? So anyways, let's see. You see right here, if you hover over it, it says, help me create a slide. So then the example text says, create a slide about buying an electric vehicle. Great. So we want to see a slide that shows what people in Darfur look like. Create slide showing what natives of Darfur look like. Let's see if it can achieve that. Now, frankly, I know exactly what they look like, and it'd be much easier for me to just go to Google Images and select an image and paste it on here. But I want to demonstrate these tools that you all should be familiar with. It takes quite a bit of time to think, and frankly, because it takes this amount of time, it's not a terribly useful tool for those who are knowledgeable, right? And as you can see, this doesn't make any sense, like the way this has been rendered. It's actually really bad. Oh my goodness. This is terrible. Anyways, so we'll carry on and we'll come back to that because that's important. So I'll just put people of Darfur. We'll come back to that. Carrying on. Now, just a quick summary for those of you who are new to this, those who follow on kick.com/Marquette Devon, you've been with me for a number of these lessons. And so I encourage you all to follow there if you've not already. But we have the SAF, which is headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Then we have the RSF, headed by a gentleman known popularly as Hemeti. SAF, this is the government. The RSF, this is the paramilitary, which is to say not the government. SAF is backed by Egypt. And it's curious to notice there's always other players. It's never a civil war that's just fought within the country. There's always these colonial forces involved. The RSF the RSF is backed by the United Arab Emirates and essentially Chad as well. But anytime you see an African nation state involved, they're usually being controlled by someone else because they don't have any ideology. They're just tools, the Africans. That's why we're starting SAS in Africa. Anyways, the SAF, which is to say the government, they control the north, the east, and Port Sudan. The RSF controls Darfur and parts of Khartoum. The main accusations, which is to say the wrongdoings by each side, is that the government has engaged airstrikes that have harmed civilians, of course, and the RSF has in fact engaged in ethnic cleansing, which is to say something much more strategic and wicked. Carrying on. Now, the UAE is often referenced as a part of this struggle. You may know the UAE for Abu Dhabi and Dubai. UAE provides Chinese-made weapons to the RSF. The UAE imports large amounts of Sudanese gold. In 2022, more than 39 tons from Sudan to UAE. And I remind you all that when you're using slides, you don't have to write in complete sentences. In fact, you should not. So in 2022, more than 39 tons of gold. And just to put that in dollars, that's over 2 billion in 1 year. That's a lot. Also, UAE has investments in Sudanese agriculture land use, which is important because UAE is a desert. Sudan has formally accused, when we say Sudan, we're talking about the government, which would be the SAF. Yes. Sudan has formally accused UAE in the International Court of Justice of breaching the 1948 Genocide Convention by supporting RSF's attack on important, here it is, non-Arab Masalit group in Darfur. So it lets you know that there is a racial and religious backing to the RSF's aims. They're very colonial. They're extractive. It is Arab Muslim colonialism, which is not new. And perhaps this Maslit term here relates to what I was saying earlier, people of Darfur. Let's see if Gemini can work. I'll give Gemini another chance here. Yes. And it's important, even when these tools may not be ready to go, which is to say, very good, which is why it's always smart to have a brain. You still want to be on the bleeding edge, learning and working on these things, because eventually they will be working and you want to be cutting edge or bleeding edge. Anyways, create a slide to show and explain who the Masalit people are. Let's see if it can do that. Let's see if we can continue our work while it's thinking. Okay. So here we are. The ICJ case brought by Sudan was dismissed. And the question is why? So it's dismissed in May. Okay, here's a slide just popped up. That's pretty disruptive. And it's actually not showing what the people actually look like, because they've been made into a cartoon, and it's also showing the wrong religious and the wrong religion and the wrong dress. Anyways, the Masalit people are non-Arab ethnic group, correct? They are primarily known for living in Western Darfur. They are being targeted in Darfur by the RSF. Sudan accused UAE of supporting attacks on this group. Yeah, not terribly insightful, but not bad. I'd take the text, but not the picture. And I'm trying to see if I could take one. Let's see. So it allows me to take that. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to see if I can get some pictures of these people called the Masalit. And so I just typed that into Google, and then I clicked images, and now we see that these people look a lot different than what was represented. These are perfect Black people, triple blackness here. The heart and origin of the African is what we're actually looking at here when we look at these people. So I'm trying to find a proper image of them, which is not as easy to come by, so we can really get a sense of their features. which makes sense. Tribal people probably are not posting a ton on social media, especially in the midst of a multi-decade war. Tis a pity. It's hard to get a good, clean shot of their face. And in fact, I don't even think most of these photos are of the Masala people. Just put people of Darfur. And the important thing with having knowledge is that I know when I'm looking at the wrong answer. Most other people do not know when they're looking at the wrong answer because they don't have enough experience. That's the challenge with the internet today. We'll just use this right here. But as you can see, these are perfect Black people. When I say perfect Black, I mean when we use the term Black man, this is the core and heart of what that actually means. Black. Anyways, carrying on. So the ICJ was supposed to prosecute the case of genocide, and they said, oh, well, we can't do that because we don't have jurisdiction. So the ICJ dismissed the case in May 2025, which lets you know how silly international law is. It's a joke. And that's because the court said it lacked jurisdiction. Sure. UAE, in retaliation, let's see. They've been blocking Sudanese planes from their airspace and airport. Now, this is interesting because Dubai is a hub in the region. It is very much so a hub. Dubai and Istanbul are enormous hubs. Now, let's talk about before that. According to Al Jazeera, and this is actually verified, and I took out the time to verify this, Sudan military destroyed a UAE plane carrying Colombian mercenaries, which is to say that the United Arab Emirates pays, hosts, and transports Colombian killers into Sudan to commit murder. Yes, this is a fact. And all of the evidence can be found quite easily. The army, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, long accused UAE of supplying advanced weaponry, including drones, to the RSF via Nyala Airport, which is an airport in Darfur. Satellite images released by Yale University's Humanitarian Research Lab have shown multiple Chinese-made long-range drones at the airport of the South Darfur state capital. You notice South Darfur is capitalized because that is in fact a term. And that's something that we'll also review in our research because South Darfur was an entirely separate nation state that was created. And this, of course, is of great relevance because none of this would be happening really if that nation state's sovereignty was respected, which it has not been. Okay. Reports of Colombian fighters in Darfur date back to late 2024 and have been confirmed by United Nations experts. And then I put the link here because it is important to have your references. And Al Jazeera is a reasonably respected outlet, though it is financially backed by the Qatari government. Okay, now let's take a look at some video, if you will. And as we go through and listen, let's listen critically and see what critical pieces of information we can pull out. If you'd be so kind, as we go through, do let me know by putting an Alpha 1 into the chat that you can in fact see and hear. First, let me acknowledge those supporting the work. May I acknowledge Jefferson. He writes, showing support while you're still here. YouTube isn't the same without the same. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones, man. I also acknowledge Joseph writes, Peace of Saints tuition will catch the replay. Absolutely. It'll be there for you. I also acknowledge Darius. He writes, support for the Marquetocratic Republic of the Congo, Marquetaganda, and Marquetawanda. And shout out to the Rwandan chicks. Good, decent number of them are thick. Not a fun place to visit. It's a bit boring. Underdeveloped tourist industry, but they got some pieces over there. Shout out to Darren, came in a real way via PayPal. Writes, peace to the saints. Appreciate you. Biko writes, peace to the saints, Mr. Burton. Appreciate your work. I will subscribe to your Twitch channel. Respect. Boom. Appreciate you. May I also acknowledge Frank. Use the Stripe link. Carrying on here. Oh, yeah. And of course, thank you to those who are supporting.
And shifting focus now, tensions are escalating between Sudan and the United Arab Emirates over Abu Dhabi's alleged support to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, currently locked in a brutal civil war with the Sudanese army. In the latest development, the Sudanese...
Firstly, this is a mischaracterization, but all of this stuff is messy. It's all messy. It's a mischaracterization because South Sudan was supposed to be its own country. Two countries going to war is not a civil war. That's an international conflict. So that is a mischaracterization in a technical sense. But as we do our research, we'll find out why this is so very messy. And consistently, we find that there is only havoc on earth because of devils. That's it. And there are two major colonial groups that we can observe in human history. One group will be the Europeans and Christianity. The other group would be the Arabs and Islam. And both have been spread through violence, and both have engaged in mass enslavement. So there you go. The world won't have peace as long as the two aforementioned entities are on the planet Earth operating.
Sudanese government says the UAE has banned Sudanese planes from landing at its airports. Sudan's Civil Aviation Authority expressed surprise at the decision, saying it is working with airlines to reprogram bookings for passengers traveling to and from the Gulf nation. Abu Dhabi has not officially confirmed the ban. The move comes right after Sudan's Air Force claimed...
And one thing I want you all to consistently make note of is the appearance of the people, because the appearance of them reflects imagined or real racial realities. And when you've had the mixing of blood in Africa, the folks whose blood has been mixed up, if you will, believe themselves to be superior, believe themselves to be Arabs, and have taken, great levels of aggression against the native Black population, which is in fact a pure population that their blood is wholly from that land.
To have shot down an Emirati aircraft carrying Colombian mercenaries as it landed at an RSF-controlled airport in Darfur. Now, the Sudanese army claims it killed 40 mercenaries who were allegedly deployed to support the RSF. Sudanese media reports say that the plane took off from a Gulf airbase carrying dozens of foreign...
Now, the challenge is when it says the airplane took off from a Gulf airbase. Well, the real question is, which Gulf state, which airport? These are all very important things.
Combatants and military equipment destined for RSF strongholds in Darfur. The army, led by General Abdel...
Now, notice this fellow right here, very fair. And you'll notice the Sudanese, and I'll just go back, the original Sudanese, very dark. Yes, you see right here, very dark, blue-black people. And you'll notice the guy who's engaged in war, the one who's in control and in power, is not very dark. He's not reflective of the original people there. And it'll be important to go through the history, because the history teaches us quite a bit. It's extraordinary how if people would just stay where they are and not try to colonize, we'd have so much more peace on earth.
Al-Fattah al-Burhan has long accused the UAE of arming the RSF, including by supplying drones and advanced weaponry.
So again, now you see they look like Arabs, they're dressed like Arabs, they're fairer, closer to Arabs.
It says that the UAE has been doing it through airports under RSF control. Sudan also cut diplomatic ties with the UAE in May over these allegations. The UAE has consistently denied the claims, despite the numerous reports from the UN experts, US officials, and international, and has downed an Emirati investigating how many Colombians were...
Now, that's the Colombian president who acknowledges that his countrymen are going around the world and acting as paid killers, which is like, word, bro. Now, that's hard to stop. It's hard to control. And this is not a unique thing. You have Frenchmen, you have Americans going around the world as paid killers. You have security forces, private security, they call them, which is paramilitary, Blackwater, I think they were called, and many others. Let's see, was it Blackwater? So many things, Black Rock, Black this, Black that. Yes, it's Blackwater. So
killed and is working to repatriate their bodies. The trade in men turned into evidence. Reports of Colombian fighters in Darfur have circulated since late last year, has killed tens of thousands, and has displaced entering its third year.
Now, the curious thing is when they estimate the length of the war, this is a hard thing to do. If a war takes a pause, did it stop? If a particular conflict over, say, territory or resources has been going on for 40 years and it's had 3 pauses, do you break it up? Are those separate wars? All curious things, and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Gulf. Sudan's war, now entering its third year, has killed tens of thousands and has displaced over 13 million and triggered the world's worst hunger and displacement crisis. Foreign interventions have only deepened the chaos, with both sides.
Well, that's misstated. Foreign interventions have created the chaos, you see.
Accused of war crimes and backed by different international actors, often with little to no accountability. The war's end remains as elusive as ever.
The war will not be ending anytime soon. That's why we need the ism on the continent of Africa, because the Africans cannot make proper decisions until they have some ism. They will continue to be a lost people. Anyways, we're going to look at yet another resource. We're going to look at quite a few resources. This may be a multi-week project. Shout out to Austin. He writes, "Peace of Saints. May we please get the Bridgerton discussion video back up on Patreon? It's currently unavailable. I need link or date." Yeah, absolutely, Austin. If you just go ahead and send me the link right now, we'll get that up for you. I also acknowledge Brad. He writes, "I just resubscribed on Twitch. Thank you for the work. I appreciate you." Shout out to the folks watching on Twitch. You are appreciated, and you are taking out the time and doing a different behavior, which I appreciate, to get us away from Google censorship. I also acknowledge, looks like Frank came back on Stripe. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. Carrying on.
In Sudan. But before I do that, we need to go back to a time before the war. The month of Ramadan, at dawn, on June 3rd, 2019. About 2 months earlier, the military has taken...
Now, here's the funny thing. He says before the war. Which war? Which war? Sudan was at war before 2019. So which war are we talking about? And of course, unfortunately, we have to be suspicious of each person that we hear talking. Which country are they from? What is their religion? What is their racial makeup? And we have to interpret what they're saying, knowing that they probably have a self-interest. Because at the end of the day, if you had no interest at all, I mean, frankly, you wouldn't even be speaking about this.
I want to tell you what's happening in Sudan. But before I do that, we need to go back to a time before the war. The month of Ramadan, at dawn, on June 3rd, 2019. About 2 months earlier, the military has taken charge after former President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown from power. The place, in front of the headquarters of the General Command of the Sudanese Army. Osman was a young man in his 30s, present at a peaceful civilian sit-in in the center of the capital, Khartoum, demanding the transfer of power to a civilian government. A military convoy reached the edge of the sit-in area.
And mind you, this talk about transition to a civilian government, there is no inherent superiority or morality in democracy or civilian government. It is merely a form of government. And the only thing that the people want from government are outcomes, right? They want a prosperous economy, yes, good public services. So the way in which that comes, nobody really cares if it's democratic or not. But often people who want power, they push for free and fair elections so that they can get the chance to get elected. It's not because they believe in the form of government. It's because they believe that they should have the opportunity to take power. And that's just one means of taking power.
And when the police and rapid support forces surrounded that area, protesters chanted, "Civilian rule, civilian rule," a reference to the civilian government that they wanted instead of the military rule. But armed forces opened live fire on the protesters right after dawn prayer during Ramadan, while people were fasting. At least 120 people were killed, and hundreds of others went missing. Osman says, "We tried to push back the rapid."
Now, I think this is a really weird place to start this conversation because this video is entitled, "What's Happening in Sudan?" The video is called "What's Happening in Sudan." So it's like, if someone has no clue and you're reading the general title of "What's Happening in Sudan," well, you'd really want to have perhaps a better foundational understanding. So I think that there's already some kind of a script here. There's also no doubt that the Muslim Arab perspective is probably favored. We started with Ramadan as like the jump off point. We've not talked about resources. We've not talked about who the original people to the land are. We've not talked about colonial history. We've not talked about any of the relevant things. We start with Ramadan, and then we start emphasizing how it's extra sad that people are being gunned down while they're fasting. So this is something that's very meaningful.
Support forces, but they surrounded the area and fired at us. 3 of my relatives were killed in front of my eyes. 2 men.
And there we go. 3 of my relatives were killed in front of my eyes. Got you. Very, very biased. We're about to go deep into the bias. I can already see. I'm going to find a different source because I don't find this to be very interesting. I don't mind listening to people I fundamentally don't believe if they're conveying their argument in an interesting way. There's a fellow who has a channel called The Middle Nation, and he's extraordinarily biased. He's a Arab Islamo supremacist, and he's also lying about the situation in Sudan, but he is more interesting to listen to and more persuasive despite him lying. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, "Peace of the Saints. The zealots must spread their story so they can gain influence. So too shall we spread our way and gain influence, sass or nothing, in a real way." And we have the potent ingredient of truth and actual goodness, you see. That's something that they absolutely do not have. Pretty much they just have lies. And lies work. Lies do work. Let me not have you think that lies don't work. They do work, in fact. So let's see. I want to show you something real quick. So let's see what this has to say.
Going around. And that trend is happening with UAE-based influencers. They are dehumanizing the killing of Sudanese people. As you all know, there's a lot that is happening in taking over, unaliving people, but in the UAE feel.
والله العظيم يا اخواني الشعب السوداني والله العظيم.
Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that I reemphasize what's being shown. So these are people from the United Arab Emirates, probably from the larger places because they're influencers, right? So places you've heard of like Dubai, Abu Dhabi, not from like Sharjah and other places that are less well known from outsiders. So
والله العظيم يا اخواني الشعب السوداني والله العظيم لو بيدي انا حرام لا اخليكم ذكريات والله.
He said, "By God, if it were up to me, I would turn the Sudanese people into a memory." So here we have an Arab in UAE who's a Muslim, and he's talking about mass murder. He said, like Hiroshima, I'd wipe you out, which is to say, hit you with a nuclear bomb. And he's laughing. And here's another Muslim.
ابو لولو جاينكم ابو لولو جاينكم بتبكون دم انتم ما تطولون شعره من محمد بن زايد شعره ما تطولون.
As you saw in that clip,
شعره من محمد بن زايد شعره ما تطولون.
as you saw in that clip, they are laughing at the genocide. They are laughing at people losing their lives. There's even a tweet that went viral that said, a life of one Emirati is worth 1,000 Sudanese people.
Now, I want you guys to ask yourself, where have you heard that before? Or maybe you haven't, but I'll tell you. They said the life of one Emirati is worth 1,000 Sudanese. The Zionists say that the fingernail of one of them is worth the lives of 1,000 Gentiles. Come on now. Sound familiar?
What kind of cruel human beings these people are, it's unfathomable. It's very hard to understand how you can sit at the comfort of are being accused of funding the RSF, the people that are committing these killings, but you are there sitting.
And we're going to get back to a different set of facts here. But one thing I want you guys to really trip on is the fact that the Africans have such little self-respect, self-understanding, and ideology that they're basically used as the very tools of their own eradication. Yes. And this is all a thing of resources. This is the Arabs and the Muslim Arabs stealing the resources of Africa in the exact same way that the Europeans have. And it can be identified as nothing more, nothing less. It is simply that. And so any report on this war that ignores that and does not start with that as the main headline is very disingenuous. That's why that fellow who starts off talking about Ramadan and his family had people, nah, bro, that's out. Shout out to Miles. He writes, peace of saints, just showing support. Mr. Burton, I hope all is well with you and your family. I know the game will be pristine. Oh, absolutely. And all is well with the family. Thank you for asking. I hope that your family too is well. And I thank you for the support. Shout out to Constantine as well, always supporting. He writes tuition. Thank you, sir. Shout out to those men who stand up, make their name known, especially for good information like this. I don't think people ever go into detail like this, now do they?
This is a gold mine in northern Sudan. Sudan is the third largest gold producer in all of Africa, behind South Africa and Ghana.
And notice what these people look like.
Gold make
these are the blue blacks. These are the true blacks. This is triple blackness. This is perfect black. Look at those people. They're in the sunlight and looking dark.
Makes up 70% of its exports, and it's estimated 85% of that.
And again, we have the blue blacks, triple blackness, perfect blackness. Notice this. These are the ones working the mines. These are the ones doing the hard labor. Pay attention.
Comes from small-scale mining, not large industrial operations. The country's officially declared gold production has nearly doubled since the start of the war.
Now, how bizarre is that? Gold production has doubled since the start of the war? I don't know. Does that make sense? Why did gold production double since the start of the war? Now that would make me ask myself some questions. And when they say the war, which war? What's this war called? Why doesn't the war have a name? Really important questions. I mean, psychologically, if you view this as a significant war or a significant happening, why don't we name the war? I want you guys to think about what I really mean there. It's important. Why does the war not have a name? Is it because we think that this place is just always going to be in perpetual war? We don't name them. It's just a natural state for these people. And then why did gold production double since the start of the war? Is that because the gold is funding the war? Maybe. The gold is funding the war, maybe. Interesting. Now, if you are the person that wants to buy gold and you know that gold production increases during war, then you have every incentive to keep the war going. Come on now. Just keep going.
5 tons of bullion last year, but the real figure is estimated to be much higher. Analysts say most of the illicitly exported gold is smuggled abroad by the paramilitary RSF. Sudan has gold deposits across various regions. These include the Red Sea.
Now, this is hugely important right here. This is something that we're going to add to our presentation, because having a map of resources, well, it's also really a map of the places that are strategic for the militaries to overtake, because they're resource rich or resource dense. And those are the places that'll keep your war effort going. Those are the places that you're really trying to get in control of any damn ways, right? So let's see. Take a screenshot of that one, and we're going to grab that and pop that onto our presentation. Boom, there we go. Just take a look here. And it has labeled a number of notable places: Khartoum, Darfur, and the Nuba Mountains. Mountains can be advantageous for a number of reasons. In this case, apparently they have resources. They also can be strategic militarily. They can be places for guerrilla fighters to retreat to. Then we have the coastal area, and coast is very important because it makes it easy to transport goods. So when you have a coast that also has resources, oh, that is some highly valuable real estate. So that is hugely important. What I'd love to see after this screen is the mapping onto the resources, the battle sites, and or the strongholds of each fighting group. That is the RSF and the SAF. I doubt that's going to happen, but it'd be great to see. Proceeding.
The hills, the Nuba Mountains, and Darfur. Then there's copper, found mainly in the Red Sea hills and the Nuba.
Copper. There's another resource. We're going to screenshot this too. And I want you all to know that anytime you're listening to an explanation of this conflict and you're not hearing a conversation about resources, you are hearing lies and propaganda. Okay? Anytime you hear a discussion about Venezuela and why the Donald wants to invade Venezuela, he's talking about drugs. He's talking about a dictator. He's talking about this and that. Nope, that's not what it's about. It's about the fact that Venezuela has the largest verified oil supply on the planet Earth. And that's all it can ever be about. These people are wicked liars. There are two forms of colonialism that have dominated. One of them is Arab Muslim colonialism, and the other one is European Christian colonialism. Both have led to huge levels of bloodshed and enslavement. These are not good groups. There's just no way to slice it other than that, which is the truth. Carrying on.
Mountains, copper is increasingly valuable because it is vital for the AI and tech boom.
Hello.
Sudan has uranium deposits in several areas, including the Nuba Mountains.
Dang, the uranium too, which can be used for weapons and much else. What? Boy, they got it all. They got it all over there. No wonder these rascals are there. What if he's about to name more resources? What if there's more, right? That'd be like, whoa, these guys have everything. Oh boy, oh boy. Resource rich, but common sense and ideology impoverished, huh? Yeah, we're going to drop this on our presentation too, because these are hugely important things. And also, a presentation is really best for its ability to be visual. Remember, and these are the kind of things that I teach in the Master Communicator course, is that presentation really is about you, the speaker. The imagery and the words on the slides, that's just that's a little bit of icing on the cake, but you're actually the show. Let me acknowledge some of the folks supporting the work. I appreciate you guys who do support scholarship. Shout out to Freddie. Been a little while. Good to see you, Freddie. Came in using the Stripe link. I also acknowledge Victor. He writes, thank you for the spiritual teaching. Continue to be a blessing to the good people of the earth. Peace to the saints. Sir, yes, sir. I also acknowledge Justice. Good to see you again. Writes, tuition. Yes, indeed. Let's get to this work.
Darfur and along the border with Central African Republic. Sudan also has significant iron ore deposits, particularly in Darfur, Kordofan, and the Red Sea Hills.
They got it all, don't they? Oh, this sounds like a great place to pillage. Sounds like a phenomenal place to go steal things. Yes? Brilliant. Now, you'll notice this is radically different than the other piece that we were watching where the guy was basically trying to pull out our heartstrings. He was using propaganda. He was engaging in pathos. He wanted us to not think, not the logos, but the pathos. He wanted us to feel, talking about his family members and all these other irrelevant things. Didn't mention anything about iron ore. Didn't mention the gold, didn't mention the copper, the uranium. I guess that stuff's irrelevant. Oh, fascinating how they try to fool us.
And there are rare earth deposits, especially in the Nuba Mountains.
They got the rare earths on deck too. I got to get over there. I need to start me a militia. They got the rare earths on
Red Sea
deck.
regions.
Oh man, they got everything. Boy, what don't they have? And they got beautiful, tall black women. Man, I'm in it like Bennett. Now, those women aren't thick, so, you know, it gets like that, but they are tall. That's a major win. That's a major W. These boys got everything in Sudan. Lord. Did you guys know this? You see, what you may have heard about rare earth is that it's a strategic resource critical to economies of the future and today, of course, that China is using rare earths to basically win the trade war against the Donald. Rare earths are apparently critically important. Huh.
Perhaps Sudan's most obvious natural
Uh-oh. And then there's the arable land. We ain't even talked about the arable land.
resource is the River Nile. The Blue and White Niles merge in Khartoum. The river is crucial for agriculture and the production of hydroelectric power. Sudan also possesses significant oil reserves, especially in its southern region.
Damn.
Some oil reserves were lost when South Sudan gained independence in 2011, but China...
So they stopped even giving us the maps, right? They're not even showing us on the map where it is, but yeah, they have oil as well. Guess I'll have to just go ahead and make a note of that separately. So here we are, natural resources. They've got a ton apparently. So they've got oil. And they also have, I'm going to use the bullet. There we go. And they also have arable land. And arable land is more important to certain nations than others. As we mentioned, if you're a Gulf state, if you're an Arab state, you got a lot of sand, not that rich topsoil that you need to grow fruits and vegetables. And you also don't have a lot of land as well. So Sudan would be a major value add. Everything's starting to make sense.
China is a major investor in Sudan's oil.
Wait, hold on.
Some oil reserves were lost when South Sudan gained independence in 2011, but China is a major investor in Sudan's oil.
Uh-oh.
It is transported through pipelines to Port Sudan, a northern city of huge strategic importance, giving access to the Red Sea and international markets. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Joining us.
Okay, so now we hear that China is involved. We also heard the term Chinese-made weapons earlier. We hear China's involved with their oil, so that's something to remember. China is involved with their oil. Maybe we should write that down. That sounds important. We should write that down for sure. Let's listen to it again, then let's write it down because it's really important.
Northern city of huge... Some oil reserves were lost when South Sudan gained independence in 2011, but China is a major investor in Sudan's oil.
And that was so much information there. There's actually quite a few things to write down. So one thing that we heard is when South Sudan gained independence. Yes. So let's write that down. South Sudan gained independence. Is that 2011? That was recent. I think that would make South Sudan the newest country in the world, right?
Sudan also possesses significant oil reserves, especially in its southern regions. Some oil reserves were lost when South Sudan gained independence in 2011, but China is a major investor in Sudan's oil. It is transported through pipelines to Port Sudan, a northern city of huge strategic importance, giving access to the Red Sea and international markets. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Joining us in the studio is Ahmed Ibrahim. He's a former...
Okay, so now what we need to be thinking of is if China's a major investor in oil, their oil travels through Port Sudan, then we'd have to say, okay, well, who is China supporting in this civil war? Well, probably the people who can protect their oil interests. Now, who's the controller of Port Sudan, right? So let's go and see from our notes. Port Sudan. Aha, Port Sudan is controlled by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, which is the government, the SAF. So China probably is going to support the SAF in this affair. Let's keep tracking that, especially as we hear stories of Chinese weapons being sold. Wow, a lot going on here, right? A lot going on. May I acknowledge Wayne? He writes, there's a lot of resources. No wonder it was a target. Yeah, you notice they never show up where there's nothing to steal. Acknowledge Front came back again. Shout out to the real one. Shout out to this gentleman supporting the work on an ongoing basis. You are appreciated.
A staffer in the transitional government under the former Prime Minister Hamdok and an independent analyst. Many thanks for joining.
Do they call bro an independent analyst? Yeah,
the program, Ahmed. So Sudan has a long
fair skin. His name's Ahmed. He's a Muslim. He's independent. Fascinating.
Long history of conflict, but this latest war stems from a power struggle between the General al-Burhan and the RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, and that began in late 2021. If we could start there, can you remind us how this partnership broke down?
Actually, the partnership broke down in early 2023 when there were deliberations over what was called then the framework agreement. And the main issue that broke the negotiations over the transitional period was the RSF, the Janjaweed militia, was.
So he mentioned Janjaweed. This is an important term that we do need to know because the Janjaweed formed the base of where certain fighting forces. So we're going to make a slide for that. Janjaweed. So that's really important. And one of the challenges when you're discussing complex topics such as this one is that people need so much background information to even understand the basic conversation. So you mentioned Janjaweed, and it's kind of like who, what, where, when, why? What's that?
Supposed to be integrated into the national army. But for various variables, whether geopolitical, whether internal politics, this didn't happen because many bets was not.
Now look at this guy right
This didn't happen.
2, 3, boom. Look at this guy in the front. Bro is lighter skinned than I am, which is a hell of a trick when you really think about it. Like, how's he lighter skinned than Marquette Devon Burton? And he's in Sudan where people are the blackest on earth. Looks like they're trying to eradicate the black there, doesn't it? Maybe that's what's going on. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because many bets were on the RSF militia to actually take over the resources of the country and to replace the national army and to actually take over the whole country. The main issue was the time frame to reintegrate.
Boy, these boys over here look like the Mujahideen. Am I wrong? Yeah, they look like the Mujahideen. They look like them balls that was with Osama.
The RSF into the army and how that should be phased out. And the other main thing is the leadership of the new forces, which was a complete delegitimization of the national army and a somewhat more legitimization for the RSF. These were the main points of contention that led to this war.
And we listed there some of the...
Yeah, that was not very clear or very well stated, but not surprising. You notice on a consistent basis when you look at these news networks, which are mostly run by Arabs, you're not hearing from the people who are victim of war crimes, right? You're not hearing from the blue-black Sudanese. You're not hearing from the Christian Sudanese, which is extraordinary that they're Christian, right? They're a victim of colonization, obviously. You're not hearing from any of the original people to the land. And so that itself lets you know that maybe we should be a little bit suspicious. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through some of the terms that have been mentioned. And and going through those terms, it will guide us for where we want to start our research. You know what? In fact, we've never talked about Sudanese independence from colonialism. So we should also consider, okay, well, uh, who colonized them? How did they get out of colonialism? Like that's really important. So yeah, maybe if we type in that one guy's name, that Bashir fellow, maybe that might teach us something about that. So let's see if we can find his name. So here we are. I'm going to go through our notes. Omar al-Bashir. Maybe if we type his name in, we can learn something about the history of Sudan. Omar al-Bashir. Yes. The rise and fall of Omar al-Bashir of Sudan. Okay.
In April of 2019, the 30-year reign of Sudan.
Again, very fair, has his head wrapped like an Arab, so we know what time it is.
Sudan's Omar al-Bashir came to an end. Like previous Sudanese leaders, he was finally toppled by the army, which sided with the people over the president. The country of Sudan itself has had 15 coup attempts, 5 of them being successful.
That's a lot.
One of them was the 1989 military coup that brought Omar al-Bashir to power. Of internal and external balancing act.
Well, let's see if we can go even farther back, because I want to know, like, who colonized Sudan? We have to go back. It seems like, are they hiding the history from us? Huh. Sudan's untold history, ancient kingdom, civil war, and the fight for freedom. I don't know. Is that a good one? Let's see.
Back in end of time. Welcome back to Veil of Time Future. Here we journey can we truly geopolitically torn apart by decades of conflict, colonial exploitation for independence, through civil war and hope. But this is more than just only to stand tall. Dan. Ancient civilizations of Sudan, Nubia, and Kush.
Great, Nubia and Kush. And if he doesn't elaborate on it, we're going to do a direct look at Nubia. We'll start with Nubia. So let's give this guy a chance and see what he wants to speak on.
Long before the arrival of European colonizers, Sudan was home to one of the world's most remarkable ancient civilizations, Nubia. Imagine towering pyramids rising from the desert sands, testaments to the power of the Nubian kingdoms.
Now, one thing I want you guys to ask yourselves. Today, we see that the Europeans are the greatest liars on earth. They're the #1 best liars. The second best liars are the Arabs. And we see that the Europeans and the Arabs want to claim that they're the Egyptians. Okay, fantastic. The Egyptians are the pyramid building race. And when we look for pyramids of the Egyptian style, we don't find them in the Arab countries. We don't find them in the European countries. We only find them in the African countries, namely what we know as Nubia or Sudan. So this is a very clear indication of where the pyramid building race comes from and where that culture originates. So anyways, we're talking geopolitics. It matters what's around. There's always cultural exchange, right? So we're starting with Nubia. So we're going to bust out a slide, and we're going to call this slide Nubia. I'm going to try to learn something about this place called Nubia.
Along the Nile. One of Nubia's most powerful kingdoms, Kush, not only coexisted with Egypt, but eventually conquered it, ruling as the 25th dynasty of the Egyptian pharaohs in the 8th century BCE. Their reign over Egypt may have ended.
Now, the funny thing is with Nubia, you can tell when someone lacks knowledge when they immediately go from talking about Nubia to talking about Egypt, and they have to relate Nubia to Egypt. Yes, of course, the two have relation, but it's actually not necessary to do that. We all are familiar with the 25th dynasty in Egypt, which is supposedly when you had the Black Pharaoh. But this, again, is the work of the Europeans. And this fellow writes, no Europeans claim to be Egyptian. Well, let me be accurate when we say Europeans, because European doesn't refer to a specific nation like Italians or Romans or Greeks, what have you, but rather to a racial category, which is to say whites. And if you look at popular media throughout the West, the Americas, the United States and Europe, you find that they portray Egyptians as Europeans. And this is well documented. So yes, the Europeans do portray themselves as the Egyptians. That's a point of fact. I'd be more than happy to invite you on to discuss it, and we can go through documentary evidence on that. It's very easy.
India's most powerful kingdoms, Kush, not only coexisted with Egypt.
So now we're talking about Kush. So the question is like, well, what's the difference between Kush and Nubia? Is it different? Is it the same thing? These lines seem to be so blurry and a bit messy, and we're going to have to clarify and fix this history.
But eventually conquered it, ruling as the 25th dynasty of the Egyptian pharaohs in the 8th century BCE. Their reign over Egypt may have ended by the 7th century BCE, but the kingdom of Kush endured, trading gold and ivory and leaving behind architectural marvels that still stand today, the pyramids of Meroe. This rich cultural heritage forms the foundation of Sudan's identity.
No, it does not. No, it does not, because Sudan has been overwhelmed by various colonial powers. So this is largely lost as well. Just like Egypt's true culture was lost also. It's supposed to form the basis of their culture, but they've been overwhelmed in war.
Legacy not forgotten by its people, but celebrated in the As the centuries passed, Sudan found itself at the crossroads of cultures and religions. By the 7th century, Arab traders and missionaries brought Islam across the Red Sea.
Okay, now this is an important note. But the question is this the history of Kush? Is this the history of Nubia? Is this the history of Sudan? So you see why using internet sources, or I should say YouTube sources, are very poor, because often they're trying to fit the explanation into a 7-minute, 8-minute video. So really you need a more focused deep dive. And so we're going to cut this one, and then we're going to dig into Nubia. Yes. And Nubia will be a better place to start. We'll check out a couple sources. That looks like, I think that's Dr. Ben there. Yeah. So we can take a listen at this. Now, this won't be as engaging because it doesn't have all the pictures. Let's see. Ancient Nubia now, how Egyptologists removed ancient Egypt from Africa. Yes, that's extraordinary. Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. Okay, we're going to take a listen to what she has to say. That seems like that'll be an interesting talk. Let me go ahead, take a pause for the cause. If you guys want to keep it going, I'm here for it. You can send in your comments, questions using the information in the description of the YouTube video, or using the information below, PayPal or Venmo. I'll see you soon. If you want to keep it going, let's get it. Okay, let's get to work. Let's see if we're working. Let's see if we're getting after this work. Okay. Shout out to Omari. He writes, I'll have to catch the replay on the member site, but this is for your time and effort. These kinds of lives are my favorite. Peace of the Saints, Sasson, Texas. I appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. See, these are the ones, they're not going to be hugely attended, but they'll be supported by the intellectuals, by those men and women who seek knowledge. May I acknowledge Mario, writes, tuition came in by Venmo. Appreciate you. Shout out to Pawan, writes, Peace of Saints. Thank you for the geopolitical game, Mr. Burton. Oh, it's truly a pleasure. I also acknowledge Constantine, writes, tuition for the education. Thank you, sir. By PayPal. Shout out to Dominic. He writes, Peace of Saints, tuition. It's hard to really trust the AI-generated videos to give the full insight and truth of what happened. Oh, absolutely. They'll give some visuals, and the funny thing is the visuals are often inaccurate. And of course, the visuals are biased in a particular direction, unfortunately. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, keep it going if the audience allows it. Okay. Seems like some folks may be here for it. Okay, let's do a little bit more. Let's see what it do. So we digging in. So this is Vanessa Davies, Egyptologist and author of Peace in Ancient Egypt. She'd be an interesting person to interview for sure.
Egypt has always traditionally been given prominence as the height of ancient culture. Nubia is now coming into its own and is being understood to be of equal importance. It is different from ancient Egypt, but it is equally important and not just an adjunct to this Egyptian culture. What archaeologists do when they pull material from the ground or when they translate texts, they bring their own cultural baggage to that interpretation and the baggage of the times that they live in. And so it's imperative that we go back and continually reassess the things that we take as facts.
This is a very good point that she brings up, which is that the scholars, unfortunately, are in many cases racist. They might be a white supremacist, a Christian. And when I say white Christian, this usually comes together. Okay. And when I say Arab Muslim, this usually comes together. So the supremacy is of those two things running in parallel. And the religion is really the vehicle that is typically used to spread the dominance of the racial group. That's how that's been working. And so essentially we find that history is replete with dishonesty, lies, and propaganda, which makes perfect sense. Just imagine if the news today that we see is dishonest and they're lying about things we can see and hear in real time. Of course, they're going to lie about what happened in the past, and we have no real ease in dealing with that. So this person writes, what about Black supremacy? This is often something, when you call out white supremacy, the white supremacists, like, well, what about Black supremacy? Fascinating. If you'd like to discuss Black supremacy, I'd be more than happy to. Just let me know. I'll share a link and we can have a conversation about it.
Many of the early archaeologists came to the study of ancient Egypt and ancient Nubia from the perspective of Semitic languages or the study of the Hebrew Bible. And it was very important to them to bring Egypt specifically into the sphere of biblical studies.
Very interesting. And it makes perfect sense, which is to say they're trying to harmonize the actual history, the facts. They want to harmonize that with the Bible's perspective. And the Bible is clearly not a historical book, right? It's a book that mentions things that exist in history, but it's not necessarily a historical document, right? Gentleman writes, I'm not white. Are you Arab? What are you? Why does this matter to you?
And so they had to carve Egypt away from Africa to bring it into that sphere.
Uh-oh.
And the way that they did that was...
And if you guys didn't catch that, I want to highlight that to you. She's saying the Christian perspective, they had to carve. And when I told you white supremacy, Christianity, that's two heads on the same dragon. They had to carve Egypt out of Africa, make it more, push it toward the Semitic history to make it in line with the Bible teachings. Come on now.
They used race.
Well,
So these
let me rewind again. She kicking some serious game. Somebody remind me to reach out to baby girl. She kicking real game right here.
carve Egypt away from Africa to bring it into that sphere. And the way that they did that was they used race. So these early archaeologists effectively made
These early archaeologists, do these guys look like Africans? Do these look like Egyptians? Do these look like Nubians? No. I'd be curious to know if they're going to portray the history accurately while also currently being a race of people who hold black slaves. Slim chances.
made ancient Egypt white.
Oh, that's so funny that the Caucasian fellow, this guy right here, he just said Europeans don't try to portray themselves as Egyptians. And then I explained, no, you're lying. And then a white woman who's an Egyptologist just explained that you're also lying, that they portrayed Egyptians as white. So why'd you lie? Well, I think the history is replete with Arab supremacists, white supremacists, Muslim supremacists, Christian supremacists lying. That's what you guys do.
In the sense that effectively made ancient Egypt white, in the sense that they made it part of a dominant Western culture, and ancient Nubia was separated from that. It was black. And this was how they took Egypt out of Africa and put it into this Semitic sphere, this biblical sphere. And it's only in recent.
So, love, you're telling me that the white men made Egypt white. Shocker. You're telling me that they stole something. Well, they've stolen a lot of things. They've stolen artifacts, stolen gold. They've stolen lives. They've stolen history. So I guess it's not surprising at all. The most dishonest people on earth. Fascinating.
Decades, the last 3-4 decades, that Egyptology has really moved away from that. And scholars who are studying Nubia are really given the chance to give a voice to this Nubian material that it wasn't given much of a chance to have in the past. When someone asks me, what was the ancient Egyptians' view of X? I immediately think of a two-pronged things. And because the ancient Egyptians had an official view of many things, and this is the view that would be put up on the walls of temples and on the walls of the tombs of the elites. That was an official, let's say, state-sanctioned view. That bore little to no resemblance to what people actually. When you look at Nubia as depicted on the walls of temples in Egypt, you will see Nubians being crushed under the chariot wheels of the king. You will see Nubians being dragged back to Egypt enslaved. What we see on the ground in terms of archaeological evidence is quite different. We see people who had Nubian names, people who were using Nubian material culture, living within Egypt, working in Egypt, marrying people with Egyptian names.
Okay. So here's a really important piece is that we find Nubia and Egypt are perhaps like Greece and Rome, which is, Greece and Rome. Let's say Athens and Rome, if you will. You have the Greek city-states and the Roman city-states, different, both European, or maybe it'd even be more so like Sparta and whatever was nearest to Sparta. They're basically city-states that are of the same greater culture, but they may war with one another, but they are similar. They have a lot of shared heritage, shared linguistic ties, shared art, shared all of these things. They're essentially a similar people. Just like you look at the Greek city-states or the Roman city-state, or excuse me, the Italian city-states, they were all on the Italian peninsula. They were all European, though they might war with one another. Same thing with the Nubians and the Egyptians. They are city-states, so to speak. They may war with each other, but they're culturally similar. Different than the Middle Easterners, different than the Europeans. And this is the story that, or rather the reality that people don't want to admit, but it's as clear as day. And it just shows the great effort that the European and the Arab has gone through to eradicate the truth of the history of not only the Black people, but the blackest people. You hear me? The blackest people. And the Black people have the oldest history. The gentleman who asks about Cash App, he says, do you have a Cash App? Well, I have Venmo, which is at the bottom of the screen. I have PayPal. And also, if you use the link in the description of the video, there's a Stripe link that you can just click that and you can pay using your bank card or your credit card, which is just the same thing as if you make an everyday purchase. So if you want to support, that's a very easy way to do so. It's accessible to everyone, shall we say. Shout out to Michael. He writes, are you familiar with Robin Walker? He is very versed in African history. Thank you for the topic. Well, right now, I mean, Africa is a continent, the largest of continents. Does it have 54 countries in it? Somebody let me know. So we need someone who's versed in Nubia or Kush at this time. Shout out to Kinder, writes, tuition came in supporting the work via PayPal. I also acknowledge via Stripe. Shout out to Frank, came in again. Shout out to the real ones. Carrying on. She's kicking some real game.
So something quite different from the very intense militaristic scenes that you see in temples.
That's a really fascinating history. I think we should make some notes on that. So I'm going to rewind back because she's teaching us about Nubia and the geopolitics of that day, how the Nubians and the Egyptians engaged one another, how there were cultural exchanges and they evolved together. And in fact, at a level, devolved together. Very important stuff.
People actually may have thought it was the official view. So when you look at Nubia as depicted on the walls of temples in Egypt, you will see Nubians being crushed under the chariot wheels of the king. You will see Nubians being dragged back to Egypt enslaved. What we see on the ground in terms of archaeological evidence is quite different. We see people who had Nubian names, people who were using Nubian material culture, living within Egypt, working in Egypt, marrying people with Egyptian names. So something quite different from the very intense militaristic scenes that you see in temples. When George Reisner...
So I'm going to show you guys what I'm typing up here. So official portrayals on temple walls show Nubians crushed under chariot of king, whereas the archaeological evidence from common Egyptians represent great cultural exchange and integration. And then the examples of such are, I'm going to rewind back to hear what the scholar says to make sure it's accurate.
Something quite different from the very intense militaristic scenes that you see in temples. When George Reisner you see on the ground in terms of archaeological evidence is quite different. We see people who had Nubian names, people who were using Nubian material culture, living within Egypt, working in Egypt, marrying people with Egyptian names. So something quite different from the very intense militaristic scenes.
Now, the other piece is when you're quoting a scholar. See, I'm not an Egyptologist. I'm not an African studies or African history scholar. And so if I were to engage someone in a discussion, it would be honorable and it would be appropriate to say, I got this information from Dr. Vanessa Davies, Egyptologist. So I'm going to go ahead and just note I'm going to put this at the top. Dr. Vanessa Davies. Egyptologist. And another thing that I like to do is include the reference link. And it's not only for the persons who may challenge the information, but it's for myself to go back. You see? So that's a proper thing to do. Carrying on. Let's go back to where we were.
Nubian names, people who were using Nubian material culture, living within Egypt, working in Egypt, marrying people with Egyptian names. So something quite different from the very intense militaristic scenes that you see in temples. When George Reisner excavated Kerma, he found the statue. He found the statue, a large, beautiful statue of Senui, and also a statue partially destroyed of Jaffa Happy, her husband. It was a very large tomb. And with size in Egypt and in Nubia, we tend to assume ruler or someone very important, which usually translates to ruler. We now understand, yes, this was a ruler's tomb. It is a completely different.
One thing I want to ask you guys watching is, why is it that today you submit to a ruler who is not of your culture? Not of your culture. And I'm not talking about race here. I'm talking about the good peoples of the earth, right? You submit to a ruler who's not of your culture. Hell, even if you're a white person in America, Donald Trump's not of your culture. He doesn't share values with you. Why is it that all of his wives are Eastern European? Couldn't find a good white woman in America? They're there. They're there. Absolutely, they're there. And when he benefits people with policy, be it tax, geopolitical, military policy, does he look to benefit you as an everyday white person? No. You know, your ruler is supposed to be the one who not only leads you, but also serves you. And today, their goal, the rulers, their goal is to make you follow a ruler who cares nothing about you. And all the ruler is there to do is to rule and extract. You too, my friends, whether you are black, white, Arab, or otherwise, are a colonial subject and don't even know it. Yes.
Time period than Jaffa Happy and Senui lived in. Much later, we understand it to be a local ruler, so it was a Kerman official who, for reasons we can guess at, brought or had these two statues brought to Kerma and put in his tomb. It could have been an appropriate.
I also want you guys to take note that the lady said, for reasons we can guess at, and that's more honest. So often you hear people lying, but they're speaking their lies as though their lies are factual. I remember I was in Baltimore and I was on a tour in the Baltimore Museum of Art, which is actually quite nice. And if I recall correctly, I think it was even free. They had an Egypt exhibition, and there was a particular thing represented in Egypt, in ancient Egyptian history, and it showed black people. And the woman says, "Oh, well, these are slaves." And then I said, "Well, how do you know that they're slaves?" She was like, she was like, "Yeah, they're slaves." I said, "Yeah, you're just repeating what you said." I said, "How do you know that they're slaves? Like, what's your evidence?" Because I'm looking at them. They're not working. They're not being abused. They're not being controlled. So what makes you think they're slaves? Well, we just know. Well, how do you know? Like, you can only know things based on evidence. To know is to have 100% certainty. So I'm just asking, how do you know they're slaves? No explanation. But they speak the lies as though it's facts. And so you can tell you're dealing with a more genuine, honest scholar when she says, we can guess at. Cool. We can speculate at. Cool.
Of Egyptian culture.
And these things need to be dated. The dates are really important. Well, Marquette, what do you mean? Well, for example, if we say there's American history and we show Americans in the year 1900, and you see a bunch of white people, you're like, oh, those are the people who are from this land. Or then you go back to 1800, you see a bunch of white people, you're like, oh, those are the people from this land. But then if you go back to 1600, then you start like, Then you go back to say like 1500. You're like, where'd the white people go? The farther back you go, anywhere, it gets a little darker now, doesn't it? And so it's important to date these things because similar to the Americas, this land has been conquered. So you're showing me the persons who came from foreign lands and conquered. You're not showing me the original inhabitants, i.e. the creators of this culture. And Marquette, why is that important? Well, do you guys find it funny that the Egyptians somehow forgot what the hieroglyphics meant? Like all of a sudden they just couldn't remember the hieroglyphics, couldn't interpret it. Well, that's because they weren't Egyptians. You see what I'm saying? The Egyptian ruling class got wiped out. Come on, along with their DNA.
Culture in general.
Like this sculpture right here is, in my opinion, a mixed race person. This person is a lot less true, like Kemetic blood. And you can tell by certain features that it's a person that's a lot less Kemetic in their blood.
Just to show that, yes, I can own these things that are Egyptian wonderful works of art. Because what we're saying, if you read between the lines, is whoever owns these statues is a powerful person. And that means this art has power.
Cool. Wow. Are these all the sources? Wow. Wow. That's very respectable. Gave the sources. That's real. Now, you know what? Let me see if I can find this scholar. Her name is Vanessa Davies. I'm going to see if I can look her up. I'd be interested to interview her. Strike one. Let's see, Vanessa Davies, Egyptology. Kind of hard to catch her. Yeah, if anyone can find her, do let me know. Okay, guess I'll have to find her info on my downtime. But anyways, let's get back to our search. We were actually looking for Nubia. See what we got here.
Until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
The term ancient Nubia refers to the ancient civilizations and cultures in the Middle Nile region. The Nile River's cataracts are sections characterized by shallow water and numerous rocky outcrops, which create rapids and obstacles for navigation. 6 major cataracts are located along the Nile.
It's really, when you look at an actual map of Africa, it shows you how utterly ridiculous the idea of people from Kemet being European is. When you look at the fact that you'd have to cross water or you'd have to go through a narrow land bridge, which is just utterly bizarre.
Primarily between Aswan in Egypt and Khartoum in Sudan. These cataracts have historically been significant for various reasons, including their impact on trade and transportation along the Nile. Nubia is a vast historical region traversed by the Nile, the longest river in Africa. This region historically encompassed the territories of the 2 Sudans, southern Egypt and present-day Ethiopia. Ancient Egyptians called Nubia Tasseti, the land of the archers. Historically, this region has often been portrayed as poorly understood.
I'm not liking his visuals, so let's see if we can find something better. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is a little more recent history than I want to look at, but I'm just curious to see how well it's represented.
The Romans fought many wars across the realms of antiquity, with the most prominent of these being featured over and...
And as you can see here in this representation, which is accurate, Roman expansion, which is to say the expansion of a European power, you see it's gone clean into Egypt and even deeper. So there's no surprise that those who today call themselves Egyptians are a people of mixed blood, in as much as they've been conquered. And when you get conquered, you suffer RAPE, you suffer various levels of integration, be it willing or unwilling. So the idea that they're claiming the original inhabitants of Kemet were European or Arab, it is just a reminder that there is a competition to see who's better at lying between the Europeans and the Arabs, or shall we say the Christians and the Muslims, who themselves are at war with one another for dominance. That's why you even see in Dearborn, you have the psychotic white supremacists going to Dearborn, Michigan, and protesting the presence of the Muslim community, which is ironic because the claim is that we have freedom of religion in these United States of America. But we, in fact, do not have freedom of religion. That's, again, one of the lies that the white supremacists promote. The reason they say this is to make you feel free. But if you try to exercise the freedom, then you realize it's all a farce. It's a schism.
Over again in mainstream documentaries. However, there are many forgotten wars that are just as fascinating and well worth exploring. They introduce us to overlooked cultures, and especially make us question just why these wars were forgotten in the first place. In this video, we'll be exploring the Roman invasion of Kush, the kingdom beyond Egypt, which had claimed the head of Augustus.
Now we're talking about Kush, not Nubia. So I'm going to see if I can break out another slide for Kush. And we'll see what we can learn here. Now, obviously, this is not directly about Kush and the history. It's about a war, particularly an invasion, as viewed by a Westerner from the Roman side.
This video was sponsored by Nature has the richest and most varied content anywhere. Ancient, modern, current, war, biography, or about the which dives deep into the talent and ice. Sign up today to Monsters.
Located in modern Sudan, it was a region with a rich history dating back thousands.
Now, this map is really fascinating. I'm going to enlarge this so we can take a look at this map. So this map we see in the upper, we have Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. And, you know, to me, it's a bit counterintuitive because I think of lower as down this way, and I think of upper as up that way. So it's a bit counterintuitive. But let us all remember that Lower Egypt is north and Upper Egypt is south. And I'm going to make some notes on that one because I want people to really remember that one. So early history, this is Egyptian history here, which Egypt and Sudan are very much so connected. I'm just going to make a note here. And mind you, these kind of counterintuitive names, it's not the first time the West has created counterintuitive names. Upper Egypt is the south. And we'll just do it like this. Lower Egypt, north. Okay, there you go. So, and you know, maybe I should take this map too, because the visuals are always a superior expression. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screenshot this and add this to our presentation. Boom. There we go. Wish I'd have did a little bit better job at screenshotting that, but I think it'll do fine for our purposes. So I'm going to add that to the presentation to give you a visual sense. Now let's get back after it.
Thousands of years, virtually to the birth of human civilization itself.
I also want you to notice that it has Lower and Upper Nubia. And curiously, it's organized in the same way, with the Lower Nubia on the north side and the Upper Nubia on the south side.
As with its neighbor to the north, much of its development would...
Oh, and you know what's quite interesting that I want to also point out to you guys is that Nubia, if I'm understanding this map correctly, Nubia is west of Kush. So Kush is a separate place from Nubia. All may be contained within modern day Sudanese territory, but these are separate places, separate civilizations.
Be driven by the life-giving presence of the Nile. Geographically speaking, the Nile starts narrow and winding as it meanders its way over hard rock, forming a series of cataracts before eventually straightening out and widening as it eventually fans out into a delta that merges with the Mediterranean.
It's also worth noting that, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I can certainly tell, very good with race, that the speaker is Caucasian, which is nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to note that. May I acknowledge Eric? He writes, keep the geopolitical streams going. So yes, sir. I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, more tuition for the lady. And you for shining light on a lost civilization. It's a shame to even have to call it a lost civilization, right? He writes, can I link a site that shows Scholar Vanessa Davies information? Oh, absolutely. I'd love to see it. So please do. You can send it using the email address below. Looks like Frank may have beat you to that. Let's see. Okay, I see your information right here. Affiliation, independent scholar. That means we might actually have a chance of getting an interview with her. So yes, I'd even be willing to pay someone like her. You see, there have been people, actually only one person who ever asked me to pay them. And it was utterly ludicrous. It was utterly ludicrous. But a scholar, I'd be willing to actually pay to hear what they have to say. So I am going to reach out.
The differences between these various stretches of river would have huge implications for the early civilizations that sprouted roots along its banks. In Lower Egypt, for instance, the river routinely overflows into a wide floodplain that makes irrigation easy. At the same time, wide, flat stretches of the Nile with north-flowing currents but south-blowing winds may travel easy. This supercharged the agriculture.
Okay, now this is really interesting. It's important to know which way the water's flowing. Yes, because that's going to provide for the transport of goods and peoples. Yes. So we do need to take a look, which way is the water traveling, which way is the wind going. So let's rewind on that. Now, was this always the case that the wind was going a certain way? Or let's not assume. Let's study. Because, for example, the Sahara Desert wasn't always there, right? Whereas we see sand, desert, dry climate, there were seasonal lakes. There were fish bones found in today's desert. People were able to engage in agriculture in these places. There was game that was moving through, and all these things can be documented. So anyways, let's rewind because this is important. Now here's a bit of comedy. You see how they're portraying the Egyptians and the Nubians? So how is it you have these two peoples who have had much interchange, who are right next to each other, and one can be stark white while the other one is stark black? It's not sensible, especially being that blacks have dominant genes and whites have recessive genes. You just can't have the two right next to each other without there being significant interchange. It's just clearly unreasonable. But again, there is a subconscious driving factor among those who do this kind of thing.
Between these various stretches of river would have huge implications for the early civilizations that sprouted roots along its.
You know, the funny thing too is the garb of this quote unquote Egyptian even resembles that of a Greek, like a Greek toga. Is this not comedy?
Of river would have huge implications for the early civilizations that sprouted roots along its banks. In Lower Egypt, for instance, the river routinely overflows into a wide floodplain that makes irrigation easy. At the same time, wide, flat stretches of the Nile with north-flowing currents but south-blowing winds may travel easy. This supercharged the agriculture and trade of early Egypt, propelling its first dynasties to great heights. Upper Egypt too benefited from these geographic boons, though perhaps to a slightly lesser extent. However, once one hit the first cataract, things began to change. The narrower Nile had a much reduced or non-existent floodplain.
These climate-related and environment-related explanations of human development are really important. They're sensible, and it shows why certain civilizations may develop faster or slower because they have less to work with. It's one of the few things that make very obvious sense when you go through the historiography of certain peoples. So I think this is a very important thing that he shares. Also, I will give one warning that you do not share other content creators in my live chat. If you really actually believe that, you can use the information below, Venmo or PayPal, or you can use the information in the YouTube video description to share the information. We've said that many times. You will be blocked moving forward. That was the one warning I'll give in this conversation.
While the winds blew less favorably and rapids or waterfalls made continuous waterborne travel difficult. The potential for agriculture and trade were therefore diminished, and a natural break occurred between the lands of the north and south. Yet that isn't to say they were completely separate. In fact, their histories were long intertwined. While Egypt of the 3000s BC was first united in the early dynastic period, the lands of Nubia played host to a variety of tribal kingdoms. Chief among these was the kingdom of Kerma, which eventually gained control of the
Okay, now this is important because Kerma was mentioned by Dr. Davies just a bit ago. So let's rewind it and re-listen. And the most intelligent thing you can do is to listen twice, 3 times, 4 times. Make sure that you truly understand. Don't let things get past you.
In the early dynastic period, the lands of Nubia played host to a variety of tribal kingdoms. Chief among these was the kingdom of Kerma, which eventually...
So it says the lands of Nubia. And so it's suggesting that within Nubia, there were different kingdoms. So it's identifying Nubia as the land, and then the kingdoms as a different, maybe city-states, if you like, or different civilizations that were on this particular land. So now we're talking about the kingdom of Kerma.
Gained control of... Chief among these was the kingdom of Kerma, which eventually gained control of the vast lands extending from the first to the fourth cataracts. It appears to have been a highly centralized state which drew wealth from agriculture, pastoralism, animal products, mineral processing, and trade with the African interior. They were a force to be reckoned with, boasting a formidable army of footmen, skirmishers, chariots, and at times even elephants, which frequently clashed with their neighbors. But it was their archers in particular, armed with massive 2-meter bows and cane arrows, that gained a fearsome reputation across antiquity. The Egyptians knew this well, referring to their southern neighbor as Ta Seti, or the land of the bow, and making frequent use of Nubian archers as auxiliaries and mercenaries. The later Achaemenids would also recognize their prowess and drafted them into their imperial army.
You know, the challenge with these YouTube scholars is that often they use imagery that's not representative, whether it's AI generated or it's actual historical imagery, but it does not represent what they're speaking about. So the audio track is not matching up with the video track. And right now he has 4 different depictions on screen and perhaps is not giving a great explanation of any of them. May I acknowledge some of the folks supporting the work. Shout out to Frank, who did send that link to Dr. Davies. I did send her a message. Xavier writes, good afternoon, Mr. Burton. Glad to see you're alive and well. I sent a 3 to 4 minute YouTube video to your email regarding this topic. The video is about archaeologists finding an Egyptian elite and are shocked that he was Nubian. Peace to the saints. They're always shocked, right? Aren't they, in that comedy? Okay, so let's take a look and see what you got here. So I'm going to pop this one up real quick.
This is going to be a very controversial video because of its ongoing debate. But I still don't understand why some people are still debating on this. I think there are some reasons to that, and I'll get to that in another video. But in this one, we are going to watch a short clip that will confirm what we as Africans have known for ages. Now let's watch the video.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro: Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai had a Nubian feature.
And when we say Nubian, to be clear, Nubian means Black African, which is redundant. But the only reason we have to say Black African is because the Europeans and the Arabs have invaded Africa.
Which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a Black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
Uh-oh. So you're telling us that the scientific evidence, which is, you can't really lie about that as easily, is verifying that the Egyptian ruling class was Black, whereas the Europeans and the Arabs portrayed them as Europeans and Arabs, which is not surprising. This is the same thing that they did to Jesus, right?
Always thought. the ancient Egyptian elite were Mediterranean type.
When he says, I thought ancient Egyptians were Mediterranean type, what he means is white.
And in this sense, Shema is representing the society of the frontier in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin.
Oh, now you hear him backtracking. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Yeah, okay. But why'd you think he was a Mediterranean type? You think? You didn't have evidence. Okay, fascinating. Then furthermore, we've just validated with the science that this is a Black African. However, now you're saying that they were mixed. No, they just said he's a Black African according to the science. So where do you get mixed from? You see what I'm saying? They just can't stand it.
Shema was Egyptian.
The archaeologist in the video is Alejandro Jimenez Serrano. He and his team found a tomb on the western bank of the Nile, opposite Aswan. And as you might have heard, the mummy was called Shemaiah. So
I wish they would write that out, Shemaiah, so that I could pull that up. Let's see. Aswan, mummy, Shemaiah. How do you spell that? I think I may have pulled it up. Just trying to pull it up on a Google search right here. I'll show you what I'm looking at. You know, sometimes when you can find the written source, it's more informative. There's no known historical or archaeological reference to a mummy named Shemaiah. The term Shemaiah does not have a record. Okay, interesting. The black mummy found in Libya. No, that's not what we're referring to. Maybe if I type in the name of that scholar that we were just hearing from, maybe that will pop up.
the archaeologist in the video is
Alejandro Jimenez Serrano. Let's see, I'm going to type that in. Alejandro Jimenez Serrano. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Mummy of ancient Egyptian nobleman discovered along Nile River. A tomb holding the mummy of Shemai, the younger brother of a powerful governor in Egypt, has been discovered in Aswan, Egypt, along the Nile River. The structure dates back more than 3,800 years. More than. That's an important part. As you get older, you get blacker. You get to the root of Egypt, Kemet. About 14 members of Shemai's extended family have been found so far in Egypt, with recent research indicating that women plague nonsense. The newly found structure appeared to hold multiple burials. Okay. An inscription on the coffin that contained the burial of Shemai, who was the younger brother of Serenaput II, a governor of Elephantine and a military general during the reigns of Pharaoh Senusret II and Pharaoh Senusret III. Found the mummy body of Shemai, but we left him in his original position in his coffin. The next year, we will have the opportunity to look at his face. Oh, okay, I'm guessing this is before they discovered that he's a Negro. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's before they discovered he's a Negro. Let's see. So that was 2017. Does this give us a better... Let's see.
They have just told me that...
Bro seemed like legitimately shocked. That's wild. You know the funny thing, and let me know if this is funny to you guys. Is it funny that they seem to not want to, there's not any news sources that want to concede this? They don't want to admit that they're finding black rulers in Egypt. Why does it seem buried? Why are there no major sources picking this up? You see it on Quora, you see it on Reddit, but you're not seeing it on any major sources. Wow. Kind of strange. And all of these are from 2017. So it's like as soon as they found out he was black, they just like stopped covering it. Now, listen, you might be like, Marquette, like, come on. No, really. I mean, that's weird. It's not well documented. And I tend to think that that's for a reason. I mean, it's really bizarre. Egypt is apparently a very fascinating place. So, question is, why is this so poorly documented? Anyways, let's get back to the video.
Andrew Jimenez Serrano. He and his team found a tomb on the western bank of the Nile, opposite Aswan. And as you might have heard, the mummy was called Shemaiah. So who was Shemaiah? Not much is known about him, but the little that we know is that he was an ancient Egyptian official who later became a vizier towards the end of the 8th dynasty during the first intermediate period. And his time in office is somehow interpreted as a sign of extreme weakness of the central power. And as you might know, ancient Egypt was in decline during the 2 intermediate periods in its history. And Mr. Jimenez Serrano just discovered that as far back as the 8th dynasty, the ruling class had Nubian features. And he finds this unexpected. That's really telling, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we continue, kindly leave a like and subscribe. It's significant. And this discovery is obviously significant, and some of you might try to debunk this by saying that Africa never had a civilization and that we should stop our obsession with Egypt. But all you have to do is listen to Mr. Jimenez Serrano and the evidence he is pointing out. He is clearly an expert that is telling you the obvious truth, and even he himself was disappointed in his findings. As a point of clarification, Africans are not obsessed with ancient Egypt. We just want the rest of the world to acknowledge Africa's history and give credit in ancient Egypt.
Right? It's crazy how Black people try to claim their history. It's a problem. It's a problem. Utterly insane. Everybody else can claim their history. We claim ours is a problem. Anyways, I acknowledge the first one. Baller alert. Shout out to Passion for Reconciliation by PayPal writes from We Woke Now in support. Appreciate you. Shout out to the real ones. Yes, indeed. We apparently doing the Lord's work here because this is information that has been suppressed. Shout out to Ernest came in supporting, and Frank is back yet again. Came in using the Stripe link in the description. We are carrying on. Now let's shoot back. It looks like this one is winding down. Let's shoot back to our video on the Kingdom of Kerma.
Thus we see that these lands of the southern Nile were not to be overlooked. Generations of northern pharaohs had to respect the threat from Nubia, which would raid or invade their lands during times of weakness. But the relationship cut both ways, and when Egypt was strong, it would be the one to push the offensive beyond the First Cataract. It is these ebbs and flows in history that would over time mix the cultures of these two regions that were otherwise geographically distinct. For instance, in the 1900s BC, Middle Kingdom Egypt extended its boundary south to the Second Cataract to establish new trading outposts and mining operations. We hear of many border wars and raids during this era, while also seeing a substantial uptick in the development of heavily...
I also want you guys to take note that we're seeing this interplay between Egypt and Nubia. The question is, are we seeing any interplay between ancient Egypt, or rather Kemet, and anywhere in the Middle East? Are we seeing any interplay between Kemet and anywhere in Europe? And really, I want to go farther back in history, and it's almost like a fear, apparently, of the Egyptologists to take us farther back. I want to talk 3000 BC. I want to talk that 4,000 to 3,000 BC range. It seems like they really don't want to deal in that. And of course, it's a harder time to report on because the historiography is more sophisticated. You have fewer records that are harder to find because they're more ancient. But these are really critical things. Shout out to Louise. He writes, wow. Oh, no, man. It is what it is. I mean, if you're there in a professional capacity and your boss is choosing to do that, it is what it is. Just knock it out and take the best that you can from the event. It's a great opportunity. Congratulations. Calvin writes, peace of saints. May I bring you a small gift for Saints Weekend? Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, and I appreciate you asking. Knowledge Akash, he writes, these type of lives are my favorite piece of the Saints. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, really. Shout out to Dylan, writes tuition. Dylan, I saw you in the Discord, I believe. I see you're getting back out in the world. Beautiful thing to see. I also acknowledge, shout out to Jeffrey, who supported the training center just now. We appreciate you. Carrying on.
Fortified towns along the contested frontier. Later, in the 1500s BC, the unparalleled supremacy.
I just want you guys to notice we're in essentially recent history. We want to get to the 3000 BC, so we're going to have to do a different video and talk about that a bit later. But I just want you all to know that we're kind of in recent history here.
Of New Kingdom Egypt would see it push all the way to the Fourth Cataract, swallowing virtually the whole of the Kingdom of Kerma, but leaving much of the heartland regions further south untouched. During these key centuries of direct pharaonic rule, new cities and temples were built, while the local ruling class adopted many aspects of Egyptian culture, including their architecture, religion, language, and writing. Following the fall of the New Kingdom, though, Nubian rulers would return to the helm as the Kingdom of Kush centered around Napata. Its kings slowly gained wealth and power and came to see themselves as the true guardians of the Nile.
Thus, when the northern pharaohs once again fell into a state of collapse, the kings of Kush.
Now, this is really rough in as much as they're going so fast that there's not much to learn. So he says, when the Egyptian pharaohs fell down, well, why'd they fall? Why'd they fall? So really, it's of minimal value what he's actually sharing here. So let's get out and let's see if we can find another source. Now, here's the comedy. That video, mind you, was about the forgotten Roman invasion of Nubia. And that's in 24 BC, even more recent history. So let's see if we can go farther back. This looks like a good one. Lost Kingdoms of Africa, 1 of 4, Nubia. Okay. Oh, maybe this one is even better.
In the burning sands of northern Africa, beneath a hot desert sun, a powerful kingdom thrived for thousands of years. Strong kings and queens built massive temples and buried their dead in pyramid-shaped tombs. But this is not Egypt, and the people who made these monuments were not ancient Egyptians. This is the Sudan, the largest country in Africa and the birthplace of Nubia, a golden kingdom nourished by the Nile.
At that time, it was the largest country of the whole world. It was an empire, a real empire.
An empire with a language that scholars still can't read.
Oh, wait. Are you saying that the Sudanese had a language? I could have sworn our everyday YouTube scholar Nick Fuentes said that the Africans didn't have any language, written language. Fascinating. So apparently bro was lying. Oh, shocker.
Lost in the shadows, the history of ancient Nubia has remained a mystery until now.
You have the chance to find something for the first time. We're writing the history books right now from the antiquities of this country.
From the ground comes evidence of sacred rituals. From the ground comes evidence of sacred rituals. An ancient crime scene.
It looks as if someone has deliberately come and smashed this altar into many, many pieces.
And a ruthless invasion that may have brought down the powerful empire.
And that's a really important thing to understand about ancient history is you can see what happened, but you cannot see why it happened. You can see the invasion, but you won't know the motivating force of the invasion. You can see the religious artifacts, yet you cannot see why a religious ceremony occurred, or the things that you really want to know. And the unfortunate thing is you'll see the Muslims and the Arabs and the Christians and the whites will speculate, or they'll put their own spin on it using their religious texts, which are fictional.
Turning detective, these archaeologists will use it and bring to life Nubia. Ancient Nubia began to emerge as a powerful state in what is now Sudan around 2000 BC. Not long after the first.
Okay, so it says Nubia started to emerge around 2000 BC, which is actually still, again, not very old, but that's fine. We'll add this to our notes. And so we're going to break out a second Nubia slide, and we'll say Nubia emerged. Let's create a bullet point here. Emerged circa 2000 BC. We'll put BCE, in fact, before Common Era. And I'm also going to take the link to this video, and I'm going to add that to the presentation as well. Carrying on.
First Egyptian dynasties had forged their own nation farther to the north. From the beginning, Nubian rulers and their formidable armies of skilled archers were perceived by the Egyptians as a force to be reckoned with, and a dangerous competitor for control of the southern reaches of the Nile. For many years, Egyptian pharaohs held sway over their southern adversaries. But there came a time when the Nubians turned the tables and conquered Egypt. Rivals at war, partners in trade, the history of these two nations would be intertwined for millennia. Today, it's the Egyptians who bask in the limelight, but the story of one of their greatest rivals is beginning to emerge from the shadows. The Nubians were African, sophisticated.
Now, I want you guys to listen to the language. He says the Nubians were African, which almost suggests alternatively that the Egyptians were not African, even though they're in a place called Africa. And this is the level of deceit that you find from the whites and the Arab historians.
The Nubians were African, sophisticated and artistic. They flourished independently of Egypt for thousands of years. Rich veins of gold brought Nubian rulers great wealth. Artists excelled at fashioning the precious metal into jewelry, and potters, architects, vitalized Egyptian traditions. Today, Sudan has nearly 3 times as many pyramids as Egypt.
Now that's important. Now, who's really the pyramid building culture, and what was the origin of it if Sudan has 3 times as many pyramids as Egypt? So I'll say today Sudan has 300% the pyramids of Egypt. That's a lot. Now, here's the thing that's weird to me. If Egypt got started first on the pyramid building, if Egypt is the origin of the pyramid building culture, the pyramid building race, why don't they have more pyramids? And if the Arabs are really the Egyptians, where are their pyramids? If the Europeans are really the Egyptians, where are their pyramids? So it just shows the blatant theft of history.
When I think about all those powerful kings who ruled over the Sudan, I like very much that those people would have been my ancestors. Always I feel I am part of them.
Excavated Nubia's magnificent tomb 20s.
Now, do you guys notice every time the scholar shows up, it's a white person? And that's no disrespect to them. I mean, shout out to them for being fascinated. But of course, we have to have a suspicion, unfortunately, due to the behaviors and the biases we know to be inherent to these people. By the way, shout out to Gary supporting the work, came in via the Stripe link.
Archaeologist George Reisner excavated Nubia's magnificent tombs and laid the foundation for a chronology of kings and queens that spans more than 1,000 years. We have their names, but many of their stories are still lost in the cryptic code of the Nubian script. To decipher the language, archaeologists dream of finding a new Rosetta Stone, like the one used to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs in 1822.
That would be absolutely fantastic if we were to find such a document. It's a scholar's dream to find a clue to solve a puzzle like this.
City in the Sand may hold the key to unlocking Nubia's past. Archaeologists Julie Anderson and Salah Ahmed must travel 220 miles north of Khartoum, the modern village of Dangail, mounds of sand, 1,000 years old. It's a well-preserved Nubian city, 2,000 years old, and some 24 football fields in size.
Now, 2,000 years old is not even really that old. That's just like around the supposed time of the birth of Christ. So we're not really talking that old. So it's a lot less interesting.
European explorers passed through this remote corner of northern Sudan in the 1800s. They left record of red brick rubble-strewn mounds. But it wasn't until Julie and Salah explored the site 3 years ago that the existence of an ancient city was finally confirmed.
We started digging, and in the first 20 minutes, we found what looked like a floor, and we started clearing it off, and then we found the edges, and we realized it was a huge wall we were standing on. It wasn't a floor at all. It was quite...
Now, why do you think that such a city may have ended? Perhaps war, perhaps famine, perhaps climate issues. There are various possibilities. But again, we're not ancient enough. So I'm going to leave this source and I want to go to another one to see if we can get more ancient. Happy to keep going. It's up to you guys. If you want to keep it rocking, we can do so. Send it in using the information below and we will carry it on. Or the information in the description of the YouTube video. For those of you who like this kind of content, I highly recommend that you subscribe on kick.com/MarquetteDevon, because that's where we actually do this. You're just kind of catching on. We're probably 3 episodes in, or 3 sessions in. May I acknowledge Mr. Chambliss? He writes, there's also some evidence that shows that Europeans, Arabs, and Iranians shared some common origination and have some overlapping genetic stock. It is said that non-brown eye colors originated in the Middle East near Jordan. May I acknowledge Ramon writes, please keep class in session, Mr. Burton. Peace to the Saints. Peace to the Saints. Good to see you. Been a little while. Shout out to Wayne. He writes, more tuition for the amazing research and work, Saints. Don't forget to support the training center. Anything helps indeed. And I can't wait to get to building, right? We need to build the pyramids of our day. I acknowledge Gary came in supporting the work. I think this is the second time for Gary. Also, shout out to Ernest supporting as well. Came in using the Stripe link. And may I acknowledge like the 1% of men and women who support. Shout out to you. I appreciate you. And thank you to those who are members, to those who watch for years on end and never support. I hope that you one day feel the abundance. Anyways, let's go ahead and get after this work.
We suddenly began to understand that the site was absolutely huge, much, much larger than we had ever anticipated.
Unearthing the city will take many years.
You know, again, I want to emphasize to everyone that you see the blacks are the workers, the whites are the thinkers and the researchers. And this is a result of the mindset of blacks and how they choose to allocate their time and capital. And this is why SAS in Africa is important, to raise up the level of thinking of people around the world, all of humankind.
A huge workforce and the hefting of countless buckets of sand. In the Sudan, the team has found the remains of one of the largest temples in the Sudan. Julie and Salah don't know exactly when it was built, but they believe it is dedicated to the supreme god worshipped by both Nubians and Egyptians, the ram-headed Amun.
Now, this is really bizarre, right? And also it goes in line with what I'd mentioned earlier, which is the eternal war of race and religion, right? The white Christian versus the Arab Muslim versus the African sun worshiper. And I think it's curious that there's been an attempt to make Egypt not a part of Africa, separate Egypt from where it actually is and its cultural inheritance. Whereas we see that the Egyptians, those in Kemet, they worship the same God as those in Nubia. And there's no question if the Nubians are black, right? They haven't stolen their identity yet. So you have the Nubians and those in Kemet, the Egyptians, they all worship the sun god Amun. So I think this is a really important revelation. I'm going to add this to the notes here.
It was built, but they believe courtyards Salah has ever seen.
I'm actually sitting on the floor of the second courtyard of the Temple of Dangel. And as you see, it is a very beautiful floor, beautifully done, carved in sandstone.
Look at this this person right here. He writes, seems a bit strange to pay for something free. Well, what's free? What's free? Things are only free if you're a freeloader, for example. Give me 1 second. You see, that's the kind of thing that's not very manly. And this is precisely what I teach against. I teach against the idea of handouts, against the idea of freeloading, especially as a man. I teach against it. It's evil. It's usury. There's only a certain culture that believes in usury. Yes? I'm not going to name which culture it is that believes in usury, but most cultures, they value the concept of pay what you owe. If someone's doing something for you, you would do something in return. There's very few cultures that try to use everyone. I'm not going to name which culture it is. So give me 1 second. Okay, very good. So I just banned this person. And in addition, what I'm going to do, because I absolutely despise freeloaders. This person writes, would you pay for something that is free? I'm a man. I'm a man. I pay what I owe, which is to say, if I'm getting value from something, then I'm going to pay for what I'm getting value for. So absolutely, just as I wouldn't accept anything for free. And I always remind you of when I moved into this neighborhood and I went to the church and they offered me breakfast and I refused the breakfast because I never paid tithes to the church. That would be me freeloading. And I'm so against freeloading, I wouldn't even accept a morsel of food because I've never one time paid tithes. I've never swept the floor at the church. I've never helped them do the landscaping because that's not what a man does. Women and children accept handouts. They accept freebies. Men do not. You pay what you owe. If you appreciate something, you support it. So in as much as that's the case, I'm going to do my last 30 minutes for the members only. So I'm about to create a new StreamYard link that I will post on the member sites. And this will be just for those who are members. They pay because I do not want to be used, just like you wouldn't want to be used either. Whether you work at CVS or 7-Eleven or whatever your job is, you wouldn't want to be used. So clearly you're getting value. That's why you're watching. If you weren't getting value, you wouldn't watch. So it just shows that you're at heart not a good person. You're a user. I don't even want to be around such kind of persons. So anyways, let's see. We're going to call this one. Okay. Today, so this one for today, noon, 12:25. Adding a thumbnail real quick. Very good. Excellent. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to post the link for everyone who's on the member sites. So you'll see the link go up shortly, and then we'll resume there. Definitely that kind of a person, not my kind of person. And I advise you, if you ever have people around you who would use you until there's nothing left, they take from you but never give anything back. Those are devils. Those are bad people. I often speak about good people and bad people. It's so important to separate yourself from bad people. And there's no expense too great to endure to get away from a bad person. Just their spirit alone is just utterly worth escaping. I'm just going on the member sites right now to post this for those who are actually members of this thing of ours. And indeed, don't post this link on our Discord. Leave it on the member sites. You'll find it there. Okay, so for the members on Patreon, you should now see that link. For the members on assassin.com, you should now see that link. For the members on Marquettism, you should now see that link. For the members on Marquette Devon, you should see that link shortly. The site's a little different, so I gotta come in. Okay. Okay, so for the members on Marquette Devon, now you should see that link. Give you guys a little bit of time to make sure you guys can find that link, and then we'll move on over there. Thank you. Morning. Just a heads up, we might head out tonight or today, so just be ready on standby for that. All right, folks, got the link. See you there. I'm on Patreon. I see the new post, but the link, but not a link for a live. Okay, let me take a look. Is there anyone else on Patreon that can confirm if they're having any issues with the link there? What's up on Assassin? Fantastic. I got the links to you there. Okay. Is there anyone else on Patreon that's having an issue with the link? Okay, I'll try this. Okay, refresh Patreon. I just added a link in the description, so that should help you. And so what I'll do, ladies and saints, is I'm going to cut this now, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes. So 5 minutes, we're going to get it in. See you soon. Peace to the saints.